Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thriving Female podcast. Now, this episode is coming to you in a rather different format. If you're listening to this on YouTube, then you will notice that I'm not in my normal nice setup with my light and my microphone and double cameras and all of that, because this week has been a little bit chaotic. And if I'm honest, this episode was not supposed to happen. I've had a week of ongoing technical issues. The joys of self-employment is that I have to do my own IT work, and I'm not very good at being my own head of IT, and I've had numerous conversations about things this week that I do not fully understand. ChatGPT is very helpful, I have to admit, at helping me to figure out what is going on with my laptop, but essentially I have had some quite extreme tech issues that has meant that a lot of my client work has been disrupted, has taken me 4 times as long as it should. Lots of working late, lots of getting up early, lots of tasks taking a long time. In general, it has been really, really stressful. And I nearly use that as an excuse not to put an episode out this week. This episode should have landed on Friday morning, and here I am at 11:30 on a Friday recording it. I am doing it anyway because I need to make sure I get it done. I committed to get a podcast out, and I'm also going to use this, if I'm honest, as an opportunity to talk about perfectionism, because it is something that I've experienced a bit this week and that I see coming up time and time again in the work that I do in my coaching. I was a guest on a friend's podcast this week, my friend Celie, and we talked a lot about perfectionism on that podcast. When the episode comes out, I will be sharing it on my social media, so do keep your eyes peeled. And go give Celie a follow. She is Coach Celie on Instagram. In that episode, we talked a lot about perfectionism. And when I was putting off recording this episode because I couldn't set my desk up how I wanted it to, and because I didn't have time to do it, and because the editing was going to take too long, I thought, you know what? Me and Celie talked about this. Let me put an episode out that's going to be a little bit scrappier than usual. I've not got the full studio set up. I've just had my Botox done. So my face is a little bit sore, and I'm not sure if I can move exactly how I want to move. But here I am putting something out because it is important that we overcome perfectionism. As I say, perfectionism is something that I see so many women paralyzed by. We tell ourselves it's because we have high standards. I used to do this all of the time, and I still find myself sometimes falling into this mindset if I'm not careful. This idea that I'm a perfectionist because I like to get things right. I like things done just so. And I'll be honest, I am quite an anal person. I do quite like things done just the right way. Harry and I had a bit of a debate the other day about this because I am quite particular about the food that I like to eat. I like good food. I like food that's cooked well. And I find it quite stressful sometimes when he cooks because he doesn't maybe cook the food how I would like it cooked. Nothing to do with calories or anything like that. I just like it to be tasty. And sometimes he likes food that when he cooks, I find it a bit more challenging when I'm not in control. I am a bit of a control freak. And I think perfectionism and control freakery, if that's a word, are definitely linked together. Perfectionism is something that a lot of professional women struggle with. And we tell ourselves it's something that comes from us having high standards. But to be honest, if we're really, really honest with ourselves, it comes from a place of fear. It comes from a fear of being judged, of looking like you don't know what you're doing, of getting it wrong. A fear of maybe having to face into the discomfort of things not feeling perfect. It's interesting when I talk to clients about perfectionism, often what we'll do is dig into, well, what's the risk of doing this? Like, why are you waiting for the perfect time? Why are you not doing this? Why do you feel like you can't do this thing because it's not perfect? And it will often come down to a couple of these things: of a fear of getting it wrong, a fear of not being able to feel like you have ticked every single box, a binary thing as well, a fear of a lot of us group our lives into good or bad, yes or no, on or off, really binary views. We don't always see the full spectrum, and there is a real fear of seeing a cross in your daily habits for the week, or a fear of getting to the end of a to-do list and not having crossed something off. There is a fear of that feeling of it being uncomfortable. And if you are somebody who usually gets things right, that fear hits harder. This is something that I see all of the time. A lot of the women that I work with through the TFP, they are people who are successful. They have successful careers. They've been used to being good at something. They have found something in their life that they are good at, and they are pursuing it as part of their career. Most people in the professional world have things they're not very good at, and you reach a point in your career where you don't have to do that thing anymore. And that makes perfectionism worse, because you are in a place where You don't have to do the bits that you're not good at. You can focus on the things that you are good at. I'll take myself as an example here. When I was at school, I was not particularly good at things like maths. And I did do a maths A-level. Don't ask why. I thought it was a good idea. When I got to university, I was studying philosophy, and I thought, I'm never going to have to do maths again. This is it. I found my sweet spot. There is a branch of philosophy called logic, which is basically maths without numbers. And as soon as I could drop logic, I could, because I didn't want to do something that felt hard, that I couldn't do right. And I see this in people's careers. It was the same for me. As soon as I could do something that didn't involve having to use a lot of numbers, I don't know why I chose banking as a career, I would do that, because I'm not somebody who is naturally a maths person. I love data and I love Excel spreadsheets, but I'm not a big fan of having to do complex calculations and things like that. So most professional women, we've found things we're good at and we've pursued that. And as a result, we are not used to being in positions where we can't do everything right. And that creates more of a fear of getting things wrong. For me personally, I put off launching my business for ages because I thought I needed to have everything sorted out. I did my personal training qualification and I'd started coaching some people, but I still wasn't launching my business because I was thinking, well, I'll do my nutrition course first and then I'll launch. Rather than just thinking, well, I'll stay in my lane and coach people from a fitness perspective and then move down the nutrition route when I'm ready. I thought I had to have a website built and a perfect app and a logo and professional images taken and loads of Instagram followers. I thought I needed all of these things before I could launch my business. Whereas actually what I ended up doing eventually, because it was at the point that I properly launched, it was COVID and you couldn't get a lot of these things. I just did it and it still worked. I'm here now. So something to think about at this point of the episode, sort of 6 minutes in, is where in your life are you putting something off because it's not ready? Is it starting a diet, joining the gym? Is it something in your career? Is it doing a qualification? Is it having a conversation about starting a family? What are you putting off because it is not the perfect time? This perfectionism isn't random. It's not something that we all have just because. It is something that we have learnt. In high pressure careers, and I've written in my notes here, especially for women, and I do think this is the case, the cost of being wrong feels huge. You are taught very early, particularly as women, that being excellent isn't enough. You don't just have to be good at your job. You also have to be likable. You have to be polished. You have to be easy to manage. You have to look a certain way. I remember there was a point when I was in my corporate career where I had a really long commute. I was commuting from Leicestershire into London daily, having to be in the office by 7:30, so getting up at stupid o'clock in the morning. Don't ask how much my season ticket was. It was disgusting. And I used to get into the office and I would change when I got into the office and do my makeup so I looked presentable. And I remember having a conversation with my boss at the time and saying, I don't think you appreciate how stressful it is for me, because I am a young person in the team. I'm one of the only females in this team. And if I was to come into the office and not do my makeup, have my hair in just a ponytail, not put a bit of effort into my appearance, wear a nice skirt or something, you would have an opinion on me. And he was like, no, I wouldn't. And I said to him, let's test it then. And so one day I didn't put my makeup on and I just came in and everybody said to me, are you okay? Are you feeling all right? Are you unwell? Because there is this real pressure for women to have to be a little bit better than men, either in how they look or in how they show up. Another job that I did when I worked in the corporate world was as the chief of staff, and one of the things we were looking at was the number of women in senior roles. We had a target we were trying to hit, and it was so interesting when we were interviewing candidates that we wanted to make sure that we had women coming into senior roles. So we would, there were certain things we had to do, like having women on a shortlist, which I know is a contentious thing and that's a whole other debate. But what was really interesting was the women that were coming through were often way better qualified than the men, because they were having to be in order to even get into the room, even to have those conversations, because there was a real pressure for women to prove themselves beyond men. We know that women are less likely to apply for jobs unless they feel overqualified for them. There's some really interesting research done on job descriptions, and that women will read the job description, and if they feel like they can do everything on the list, then they will apply, whereas men will look at it and if they can do half of the things on the list, then they'll apply. That's a really interesting difference that I don't think just comes down to gender. I think it comes down to cultural conditioning, I suppose. We also know that women feel like they have to be better than men, even though we are way beyond a lot of the issues that existed for women in the workplace in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 50s, I suppose, as well. It is still there. There is still embedded in us this feeling that we have to prove ourselves. There is still an inbuilt misogyny that I don't think we can get away from. And growing up and coming into the workplace, we internalize a lot of that pressure, and perfectionism becomes our strategy to deal with that. And that perfectionism exists from a career perspective, from a work perspective, but it bleeds into other areas of our lives as well. And linked to that, we have a real fear of it all crashing down. This was definitely true for me. A lot of my perfectionism, particularly around health and fitness, came from a fear that if I tried something and it didn't work, one, it would feel horrible, and I hated feeling uncomfortable. I was already uncomfortable enough. I didn't need to feel worse. But there was also a fear that if I tried something, it might break the fragile equilibrium that I'd somehow built. So I remember there was a point where I had a really tough job. I was stressed out. I was commuting quite a lot. And I really wanted to lose some weight and to be fitter and healthier. And I was in this place where I was yo-yo dieting. I'd diet for a few days and it wouldn't work. I'd go to the pub. I'd end up kind of binging a little bit at the weekends, start again on Monday, and that was the cycle we were on. And as much as that wasn't working, it worked. Like, it wasn't getting me the result at all, but it was getting me through. It was allowing me to cope. And I remember having a conversation with a PT that I was thinking of signing up with, and them saying to me, well, we could do this and we could do this and we could get you in the gym on a weekend. And in my head, I was thinking that all sounds great, but right now, this is the thing that's allowing me to survive. And if I take away the tracking my food for 3 days and then crashing off, am I going to be able to keep going? Like, I know this works. It's not working, but it's just enough to keep things in place. So that perfectionism can come from a lot of different places. It can come from culturally embedded things around women. It can come from just the personality type of being somebody who has built a successful career. And it can come from a fear of it all falling apart. It can also come from a fear of discomfort. And I think that's a big part of this, a fear of it feeling hard, it feeling painful, it feeling uncomfortable. And this perfectionism shows up in so many areas of life. It shows up in work things. I have conversations with many a client who has put off applying for a promotion or having a conversation about a pay rise because it's not the perfect time. I remember having a chat with a client actually who wanted to have a very difficult conversation with their boss. And every time they got to the point where they could have that conversation, there was a reason they couldn't have it. It was the boss had had a bad day, or they weren't feeling well, or they were having to rush to a meeting afterwards and it didn't feel like the right time to have the conversation, or the meeting room wasn't the right meeting room to have that conversation in because it had a glass wall. Like, all of these things that are the reason you're telling yourself this is not the perfect time to have that conversation. But it can also show up in really small things from a health and fitness perspective. And that's obviously a big reason why you guys are listening to this podcast, is because you have health and fitness goals, you're thoughtful about how to manage your health and fitness. And it's probably the area that this is most obvious. We will see it in other areas, but it's probably the area this is most obvious. It's that thing of saying, I'm going to go to the gym after work today. Oh, wait, I'm getting a later train home, so I'm not going to be able to do 45 minutes in the gym. Therefore, what's the point? I'm not going to bother going. It's that thing of thinking, I bought a packed lunch today, but I don't have time to heat it up. So screw it, I'm going to go and get a really, really indulgent lunch from somewhere, rather than thinking, I'll pop to Pret and get a salad. It's that thing of thinking, I can't do 10,000 steps today because I've been stuck at my desk, so I'm just not going to bother going for a walk at all because what's the point? It's that what's the point mindset. It's that I can't do the exact thing I said I was going to do, so I'm just not going to bother doing anything at all. In fact, recently, I actually caught myself doing this a little bit. I've always wanted to do Pilates. I actually posted about this on my Instagram a couple of days ago. I actually posted a reel on this. I've wanted to do Pilates for a really long time. And for a long time, I told myself it wasn't for me because back when I was bigger, when I was in the corporate world, from a lot of stuff from my childhood about being big and clumsy and all of these things, I felt like I couldn't do it. And it then kind of went to the back of my mind. I couldn't find anywhere locally that did it. And then very recently, a Pilates studio popped up in my village. It's literally a minute up the road from me. There was no excuse. And when it opened, I thought, oh, I'll go and have a look. And I went and did my taster session. And then I thought, I won't book a class just yet because it's not quite the right time. I've got a lot going on work-wise. I don't have the right clothes. What do I wear to a Pilates class? I only have gym clothes. I'm not flexible enough. Maybe I need to work on my flexibility before I start. I created all these stories about why it wasn't the right time until I said to myself, this is stupid. You know you want to do this. You know that something is better than nothing. Just book a class. See what happens. You don't have to suddenly become a Pilates expert. I now love it. It's my favourite part of my week. But often, this will pop up. This perfectionist mindset pops up in all areas of your life. But as I say, the most common area where it pops up is around health and fitness things. And is around, I said I was going to do X. I can't do X. Therefore, I'm not going to bother. And that might be food. That might be steps. That might be not drinking. This is another conversation that I have with a lot of people, particularly at the beginning of the year, dry January, where someone will say to me, I want to do dry January, but I've got a wedding in the middle of the month where I am going to want to drink and I'd like to drink. So therefore, I'm not going to do dry January at all. And it's that thing of sitting there going, that is so silly. You could still do the rest of dry January if you wanted to. Just have a drink that one day and then move on from it. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means that you've adjusted the parameters slightly. And that's exactly the point when it comes to managing perfectionism. It's not about either or. It's not about binary. It's not about I either do something or I don't bother at all. It's about adjusting the parameters and getting okay with doing the best you can in any given circumstance. This podcast is probably proof of that, right? This is not the most prepped podcast I've ever done. This is not the most professional. I have got my desk set up in such a way to get the camera in the right place that I can't actually cross my legs, and it's incredibly uncomfortable. I've just had Botox and my face is a little bit sore, but I'm doing it anyway because what I've said to myself is the goal isn't to have a perfect, 100% beautifully edited, beautifully lit, perfect audio podcast. The goal is to get something out there because that is what I committed to do. Something that I'll often say to clients is have a think about the target that you are setting. So rather than saying, I am going to do all of these great things, be really clear about what the actual intention is. So rather than saying, I'm going to go to the gym and do a 45-minute workout, set your goal as I'm going to do a workout. And that could be a 45-minute gym workout. It could be a 10-minute gym workout, or that could be a quick home workout, but you're still going to do something. Rather than saying, I am going to do 10,000 steps every single day. I wrote a Substack on this, by the way, so do go and check that out. I'll put the link in the description below. Rather than saying I'm going to do 10,000 steps a day, set yourself an average step target for the week. So if you don't quite hit it one day, you can make up for it on a different day and make that step target something you know you can actually achieve. And a mindset that I will often use is, what is the next best option? What is the next best option you could do over the thing that you can't do for whatever reason? So if you can't have the beautifully prepped lunch that you planned to bring because you forgot it at home, for example, or your Tupperware broke or whatever it might be, can you go to prep and get something nutritious? Could you pop to M&S and assemble yourself something that looks pretty similar? What is the next best option you can do? Because doing that, you're not letting yourself off the hook. You're not letting yourself give up. You are just saying, I'm going to make it possible for me to show up. What you have to think about is, how can I make sure that I do something? Because the mantra that I should honestly get tattooed on my forehead is, something is always better than nothing. It doesn't matter what that something is. If it's more than nothing, then it is progress, then you have moved forward. If you are a professional woman, perfectionism might have been keeping you stuck. You might be sitting there today thinking, I won't go to the gym because I can't do a full workout. I'm not going to bother thinking about my nutrition this week because I've got one meal out on Saturday night. But let's be really clear. I'm the perfect example of this. You can always do something, and there is always an option for you. Just because you can't do it perfectly doesn't mean you shouldn't do it at all. And what I will leave you with, a little something to think about, that I actually stole from my philosophy degree, because it's got to come in useful for something. I spent 3 years in that, spending a lot of money basically for a very expensive library membership because I had no lectures. This is one thing that I took from it that I often come back to. Trying to do something perfectly is impossible because no human being is perfect. We can aspire to be perfect. We can have an ideal that we aim towards. We can have an idea in our mind of what a perfect version of us would do, But we have to remember that we are never going to be that perfect person. Human beings are inherently flawed. We are never going to be able to do everything perfectly because we don't operate in a vacuum. There are circumstances that happen to us, there are things that happen around us, and there are things that happen that we have no control over. We cannot be perfect. We can aim to do the best we can. What we have to do is look at what perfect would be and then work out what the next best option is that is achievable from where we are now. It's about narrowing that gap between perfect and where we are and trying to get a little bit closer. If this episode has been helpful, make sure that you share it with somebody who overthinks like you do, or just give it a save and come back to it for when you might be in that perfectionist cycle. Because believe me, I wish I'd had this episode to listen to when I was in that place of, I'll wait till tomorrow, I'll do it later. It would have forced me to probably do it. And do drop me a message if you want to chat any of this through, or if anything really resonated. It's always nice to hear from people who listen. I always love it when I do get those messages. Thank you for being here, even when this podcast is late, unpolished, and very, very imperfect. But we don't need to be perfect. We just need to do the best we can. This was the next best action. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will speak to you next time.